All right, now we're on to another nostalgia trip suggested by you,
Hmm.
um, where we're going to talk about the Homeward Bound movies, or Disney doing remakes of their own movies before they made it trendy.
Yeah.
So there's that. Did you ever see the 1963 one?
No, but it's on Disney Plus.
Yeah, where it's basically this just without the dialogue.
Yeah, I've
If I
heard. I saw where the original is more just narration.
Yeah, I don't even know if I remember that, but
Oh,
it's my
you
memory
did?
of it's vague. Because that's the thing is you look at the second movie
Hmm.
when they're in San Francisco, and it's like that one makes the first one seem so mature.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the original from the 60s, the first one from the 90s looks a little immature by comparison. So it's interesting how you can kind of go back
Yeah.
and they kind of just progressively get more kid friendly, I guess you could say, without being too condescending.
Yeah, because the first one still feels like a I don't know what you would call it, but the second one definitely feels like a run of the mill animals talk movie.
Yeah, so almost like John Hughes ghost wrote it in his "I don't give a fuck" days,
Yeah, you could go with that.
like in his 101 Dalmatians days. So, do you have anywhere in particular you want to? Obviously, we're gonna start with the first one,
Yeah.
but is there anything in particular you want to start off with on that one?
Not that I could think of. What do you got?
Just pretty much what I just said. I was like, but by it really seemed like the much more mature movie when we were growing up with it. When you compare it to the second one,
Hmm.
but watching it back now, I think especially with the character, because obviously you talk about there being like characters that are surrogates for the audience,
Hmm.
and you can certainly tell that Chance is like the surrogate for the children in the audience.
Hmm.
But it is interesting that all three animals have, like, they each have their individual owner in the family, like between the kids.
Hmm.
And I do like how, like, their personalities kind of match up, where it's clear that Chance belongs to the youngest kid, and Sassy belongs to the girl, and then Shadow belongs to the older kid,
Hmm.
and how they kind of mirror each other in their placement in the family in that way. Because we've got some like the cast is obviously much more recognizable than I realized when we were growing
Hmm.
up. With Don Amici in particular doing Shadow in his next to last movie.
Hmm.
This was the last movie that came out when he was alive, and then after he had died, Karina came out, and then that was his last one. But
His
this is,
presence is definitely missed in the second one.
yeah. To be fair, Ralph Waite's doing a really good impression, but you can
Yeah.
still sense there's a bit of the gravitas that isn't quite there.
Plus, I think in the second one, Shadow looks younger, where in this one, he does kind of look like an older dog.
Yeah, the thing that makes me, the thing that makes me agree with that is the shot when they put the phone up to his ear,
Uh huh.
and he just looks like he's dumb with his life.
He even points that out. He's like, I never understand what they're doing when they do that, which implies this has happened before.
Which is odd because there's so many things they understand that you wouldn't think they would, but the phone is confusing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is, and I do also like the dialogue between them, where it's like, well, some of the things they call out to, like, when it's like, especially from Sassy's perspective, there's a lot of them calling out the illogical things that dogs do, and their dialogue kind of trying to give some sort of purpose to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like when she calls out, "So you want to try to eat that thing that's running away from you? So your solution is to bark at it? Like that's gonna help." But there's also some interesting details put in, like the idea of obviously the owners own the pets,
Hmm.
but the pets see themselves as the owners of the humans. I always thought was an
Yeah.
interesting detail.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about? We kind of talked about Amici. What do you think about Field and Michael J. Fox?
I feel like they kind of fit what they're going for, especially Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox is really good at sounding childish.
Yeah, yeah, because he gets some lines where you can tell that, like I said, there is a certain maturity to the movie about the way like the subject matter's handled and the way it's shot, especially.
It's a very nice looking movie.
But then you also get stuff that kind of balances out. Oh yeah, this was a movie made for kids in the early '90s. When you get Chance saying stuff like Arnold
I
Schwarzenegger.
knew you were going with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know how, but I did.
The one that kind of boggles my mind is Mondo Bizarro. What the
Mm.
hell is that? I was like, is this a Superman reference? Oh no, he just means bizarre, but he's saying it in a cool '90s way.
And it also brings back the point, like, how does he understand that, but doesn't understand, hey, we're going to leave for a little bit, but we'll be back.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you kind of have to. It is a movie that like grows on you as it goes
Hmm.
because it's like because like say you're going into it as an adult, it probably looks bad that you've taken the original movie from the '60s and you've added the animals talk now. But not only that, but they didn't even bother to try to manipulate it to look like they're actually talking. It's just literally, it's just voiceover. It's
Somehow,
like,
though, I kind of feel like that works for the first movie as opposed to trying to have their mouths move.
yeah, because it wasn't until Babe a couple years later gave making their mouths move a good reputation.
Yeah.
It's like I think I want to say pre Babe that was a pretty you risked making it look really weird when you tried that.
Yeah. But I think it made it nice because, like, a lot, especially with Shadow, like, a lot of the emotions that the animals are supposed to be feeling do come through.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that we were talking about some of the dialogue between the animals, and it was like I was I was also thinking about the back and forth when Chance is talking about stuff that he saw on TV and how he's trying to explain to Shadow who Rin Tin Tin is,
Hmm.
and it's once again it's the way they work with dog logic that can
Hmm.
be really funny. Where it's stuff like when he says, you know, he's talking about Rin Tin Tin, and then Shadow says, "Well, that was on TV. That's not real." And then Chance tries to defend that, and he's like, "It's not real. Can you smell it?" And it's like, "Checkmate, Shadow." Like, it's like he's the wise one, so we'll go with it. And it's sometimes sometimes it can be interestingly and unexpectedly aggressive when they are truly we're seeing it from a dog's perspective. Like when Chance is chasing the goose around,
Hmm.
his response is, "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to chew on your neck." It's like, dude, that thing lives like you do. That there's another. No, we're talking about Babe. There's another movie where that thing talks too. And this is what we say. All right.
It's interesting too how in the first, like in the second one, like everything they come in contact with talks, but in the first one, they're the only ones that do.
Yeah, that was definitely a sequelifying effect of the second movie.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
There's
then
even
there is
like there's even some good like family moments, like with the human characters.
yeah, which is another thing we'll talk about that's definitely missing from the second one,
Hmm.
where we've got Robert Hayes, who we know from Airplane. Of course, I actually just talked about Robert Hayes when I did. I want to talk about Cat's Eye in the King series.
Hmm.
So he's back. He's back again already, and of
Is
course,
his is it a situation? I haven't seen a lot of Robert Hayes movies. Is it a situation like we were talking about where Airplane's the weird one, even though that's where we know him from? Or is he in quite a few comedies?
I'm trying to remember. I'm blanking at the moment, but I feel like it's. I feel like Airplane is the weird one on just about anybody's filmography, and that's what makes it so great.
I don't know if you could say that about Leslie Nielsen.
At the time, it was the weird one on his filmography, and then Airplane kind of put
But then
in
it
that
sent his
direction.
career into a whole new direction.
Yeah,
I mean,
and yeah, you talk about
we're kind of getting off topic, but I just have to say, Leslie Nielsen's great in Airplane. Robert Hayes is great in Airplane. Robert Stack's great in Airplane. Airplane is Lloyd Bridges' show.
yeah. But the thing also about the humans is we have Kim Grace as the mom, and she was in Brazil, and she was Will Graham's wife in Manhunter.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up the kid that played Peter,
Yeah.
so I was like, where did his life go? And he has had a very interesting career. Did you look up the kid that played Peter?
No, I didn't.
He's had a very interesting life after the Homeward Bound movies.
Okay.
Which, by the way, apparently he looked, because sometimes, when you're like a child in movies, sometimes you look back on things in different ways. But he has come out and said that he loved making these movies.
Mm-hmm.
But acting isn't really the direction he went in.
Hmm.
He was a director and producer on like episodes of National Geographic.
Really? Huh.
He was a sound guy on Cop and a Half. And I think the most interesting thing about this, for a while he was a trailer editor.
Huh.
He did editing on the trailers for Watchmen, Sweeney Todd, and Tron Legacy.
Oh.
And he did like TVs, like promos and TV spots editing. He did that for like Drive.
Oh.
It's like he's been all around this industry.
Huh.
So
He
I
has
found that
worn
really
like
interesting
every
about
hat
him.
there is to wear.
Yeah, because when you look at movies like this, you kind of see like some of the child stars, and they just kind of either stopped acting or did whatever, or maybe went down a worse path. And
Mm.
like that was really surprising and interesting to see he's been all over the industry still.
Huh. What about the other two? Did they fall in the category of just stopped acting?
I actually didn't get a chance to look them up because Peter was such a rabbit hole.
Oh, okay.
I was like, wow, this is insane, and then I stopped. Hopefully they're fine.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then we're gonna look it up, and one's gonna have like a really tragic backstory or something.
Yeah, one of them's probably dead or something.
Yeah, like how one of the kids from Bushwhacked had like a heart problem or something, and that just kind of came from out of nowhere. Hopefully, it's nothing like that. But speaking of like more profound things and like later in life, this is another one of those movies where when you look back on it and you kind of see some of the messages.
Hmm.
And you talk about how the dogs talk to each other and how it's dog logic, and then Sassy's like making fun of them for their dog logic and stuff like that.
Hmm.
The whole dog's drool thing is such an early 90s thing, and they say it so many times. They were married to that line.
Yeah.
But the thing is also is looking back on it now, you look at some of those moments like when they lose Sassy to the waterfall, and it's which sounds drastic, but you get this moment where Shadow actually gets to talk to Chance, and we see Chance learning pretty much in the same way a child would. And it's basically this whole message about people being put in the position of responsibilities in life that they didn't ask for.
Hmm.
It's like there's something really profound in that. Than the fact that this movie was able to touch on it in that way.
Shadow at that point, like after Sassy falls in the river, Shadow goes full Bruce Wayne after Rachel Dawes blew up.
We always fall on the Batman references. I don't know what we'd do without them.
I know. But I mean, that was
Yeah.
the one that came to mind first.
Yeah, and then and I do think we talked about how the second movie kind of goes into you think it was ghost written by John Hughes in his later days of just doing whatever, like 101 Dalmatians and stuff like that.
Hmm.
This movie isn't innocent in that regard by the time they get to the pound.
Yeah.
The whole Pound sequence feels very much like it's out of your average, ordinary, kid-friendly movie about talking dogs.
I
But I
had that feeling too. Like up until the Pound, I was like, this movie actually is, for the most part, kind of mature in the way it does things. And then the Mission Impossible theme hits, and it's very jarring how different the tone feels.
Yeah, and that was 3 years before the first movie came out, so they're referencing the show, so they're going way back.
Yeah.
But the thing also is, I'm never quite sure which of these moments is out of place because one of them is.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wouldn't have such a problem with the Pound scene
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't the fact that we get the moment before it of the family finding out that they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And we get this big moment of like this triumphant, almost finale feel of, hey kid, you're in school? Well, forget school. Your pets are fine. And it's, it's like,
Dude, with
come
these
on.
movies, that family cannot go do anything.
Yeah, through both movies, they don't get to do anything.
No. Like Robert Hayes has to be sitting there going, "What did I marry into? These animals run the show."
Yeah, because there's even the moment when Peter goes to the police station, and that cop could have just said, "Dude, you're talking about your pets. There's other means of doing that, but we're the police station. But he was like full on, kid, I'm gonna snap you in half for bringing that shit here.
He even uses the lines, "We have more important things to do."
It's like, all right, he's a kid, settle down a little bit. It's like we get it, but still.
But I
But
mean,
then there's also
at the same time, in the little Podunk town they came from, like the police probably would have helped them.
yeah, it's like Ron Canada at the end of Home Alone 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, you need to find your kid, hop in the back. Oh, that's not the last time by any means we're going to talk about Home Alone 2. It's going to come up a lot when we talk about the second movie, by the way.
Oh, okay. You said that so aggressively.
Well, I mean, we'll get there. But
Okay.
but but there is a funny moment that I do like at the Pound, and that is when after Chances had the run in with the porcupine, and he's got them stuck in his face, and they're trying to take them out.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of a loud car is passing by. I don't know how much you can hear that, but
I didn't hear anything.
okay, good. Because Shadow has been the one that's like really wise and seems for the most, obviously he's naive like the rest of the animals, but he seems to know more about what's going on than the others, or he has more wisdom about what's going on than the others.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really funny to me that that moment we have when Chance is just getting the things taken out of his face, and he's like, oh my god, just kill me already. And Shadow's outside the door. Oh my god, they're killing it. He goes. You want to talk about him being Batman? He goes full Adam West Batman. But there is something to that as well that's a little darker that they barely touch on, and they kind of try to cover it up through Chance and his childlike behavior because it's a kid's movie. But
mm-hmm.
it is interesting that Chance is dealing with trauma in a way they don't outright like address. From the fact that he came from the Pound and he was rescued from the Pound.
Yeah.
But he has PTSD when he sees people in uniforms.
Yeah.
They'll show up and they're like, hey, we're here to help you, and he's like, people in uniforms, and he starts to freak out.
I do love the little cut though of where like they're getting in the vehicle and Shadow's like, it's okay, they're trying to help. And then we just cut to the sign and we just hear Chance go, they took us to the back.
Yeah, it's like they're downplaying the fact that he's traumatized, but once they get to the Pound, everything is played for comedy. It's weird.
Well, I mean, to be fair, also, I mean, what probably didn't help was the fact that the people at the Pound were handling them so aggressively.
Yeah.
Like they got a muzzle for Shadow, and he's just sitting there.
Yeah, and this because I oh yeah, what I was gonna say was I think another reason that the pound scene doesn't work for me is where it's placed. But like I said, I can't tell which scene is misplaced because because we have the moment with the lost girl that they find,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really it's probably my favorite moment in the movie. It's like the most heartwarming moment in the movie outside of when they return home.
Mm-hmm.
And then the lost girl followed by the family being informed that they've been found and they're safe
Mm-hmm.
feels like the climax, and it would have been a good climax,
Mm-hmm.
but the whole pound thing comes after it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the family's already in the car going, oh yeah, this is gonna be the greatest thing ever, they're found and we're gonna have them again. And this is happening simultaneously with the pound, and it's like you're mixing your what could be your final moments with another climax. But once again, this is something that the sequel does even worse. So we'll get to that. So, but everything in this movie that maybe shouldn't work works now because you now have the sequel to compare it to, and it makes it look good by comparison.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So,
like the writers were like, "Oh shit, we have to address Chance's issues with the pound," so they just threw the pound scene in there.
yeah, because it's like the pound doesn't come out of nowhere because they keep building it up like that, and then you're like, oh yeah, you can't like it's kind of lose lose. It's like either you were gonna have a climax that feels tacked on, or you were just not gonna have a payoff to the pound stuff.
Yeah.
It's like they kind of backed into a corner there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if I feel like if you wanted to do the pound scene, which this takes away from the first part, but the way you could do it, I mean, it'd be early, but you could have the pets just leave the home to go look for the owners, have Gene Smart come to their house instead of them going to her ranch. They run away. The pound catches them, and then they escape from the pound, and that's how they end up in the woods.
Yeah, I can see that.
But then you have the problem of the title then wouldn't make sense because they literally would have started the movie by leaving home. So that ultimately doesn't work.
Well, they would still be bound for home, but it would
Or
just be
or or you could okay, this how about this? How about this? There's a parallel. When Sassy gets pulled out of the river and is saved by the nice guy, on the flip side, Chance and Shadow get taken to the pound and they have to get out.
yeah.
And you can have the
There's
parallel of Sassy living the high life with this dude while they're trying to get out of the pound where it's hell.
Yeah, because it's interesting how it's like. Well, I guess the one thing about Sassy being with them is she's kind of playing the fish out of water scenario, where she's much more out of place than they are, especially since she looks like a diva.
Yeah. And you could even tease the family getting them back because you could still have it play out at the pound that the pound people find them and they call the family, and you could literally have a shot of like the director of the pound getting ready to call Robert Hayes, and then they're like, all the animals escaped, and while Robert Hayes' phone's ringing, the pound hangs up before he can get to an answer. There, you've done the family tease without doing all the over the top stuff at the school.
It is interesting how many different ways you can change the structure of this movie,
Mm-hmm.
and the one they went with seems to be the least like the most ill advised.
Yeah, because then when we get to the end, they try to, after we've had the slapstick at the pound, then they try to tag on the emotional moment of like Shadow can't get out of the hole.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. Anything after the family knows that they've been found feels tacked on, but I don't think that's the fault of those scenes. I think it's just where the scene where the family finds out is placed in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably where that problem stems from.
Yeah.
But if you just put that scene in a different place, the movie would probably have a much better flow to it.
Yeah.
And we were also talking about all the animals being together. There is much more about the back and forth between all three of them.
Yeah.
Or it was there's one. I feel bad dropping language like this in a video about these movies, but it's just the first thing that comes to mind because both these movies are rated G.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, every time I hear it, I expect it, and it never comes just by the way it's built up.
What's that?
It's after Chance has to run in with the porcupine, and Shadow says the line, "Sassy, could you pull those things out?"
Mm-hmm.
But the way those lines line up is Chance is, freaking out because he's got them in his face, and Sassy's over here going, well, like my mother always said, curiosity killed the dog. And then immediately Shadow says, Sassy, could you... And it's like, the way it follows, curiosity killed the dog, I'm waiting for Sassy, could you shut the fuck up? It's like the one time Shadow would lose his cool.
So are you saying that you want a remake of Homeward Bound done by Trey Parker and Matt Stone? Because that's how you get a remake of Homeward Bound with Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
I'd want it in their style of animation. So yeah, so I know the first one is a beloved movie, and like I said, I don't mean to undermine it by saying that it doesn't look as good when you look at the movie from the '60s.
What's funny too is there are some really nice scenes you could pull from it. The scenes with Shadow and Peter are really nice.
Yeah, and
especially when he's dropping him off, and Shadow tells him, he's like, "I know you're sad. I just can't figure out why."
Yeah, and that's one thing where it's like there is a balance, because normally I would say the Peter and Shadow scenes feel like they're in a different movie to say the Chance scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we were talking about, where that's just kind of family dynamic, where you have different aspects of a family with people that act in different ways, especially when you're dealing with children.
Yeah, and
So
they kind of lay it out with characterization. So like it makes it make sense.
And like I said, even if it feels like we get a few endings, that final one where they all come back one at a time is like pretty much iconic in regards to family movies, especially about pets.
Especially when Peter just straight up gave up on Shadow. He didn't make it. He was too old. Old fucker. 3 years later in San Francisco, he's still alive because they never call him Shadow 2.
He just has a different voice and a slightly different appearance, but it's him. Justice.
That probably would have made for a better sequel. Have the movie start with Shadow dying, and he has a puppy, and he has to learn about life from Chance and Sassy through their weird point of view. But still carry over some of the lessons from the first Shadow.
Oh, the second movie has no intentions of being profound in any way whatsoever. It's not even gonna try. Should we go on to the second one?
Yeah, let's go on to the Michael Rispoli vehicle. I remembered his name this time. I made it a point to learn his name before this video.
All right,
the kind of movie that you're in, you take somebody that's really good at movies like Michael Rispoli, and you give him a dog piss stain on his shirt throughout the entire runtime.
Yep, this is that movie. This is the movie where Chance was just the childlike one that liked to eat a lot in the first movie, and now he gets to puke and piss like 5 minutes between each other.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be that kind of movie. To be fair, as far as the setup goes, it does feel very blatant Home Alone 2. It's even to the point that there's a plane mix-up.
Mm-hmm.
And the original movie's title 2, Lost in, and then the city they're in.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of Home Alone influence here. But to be fair, I suppose you could put them anywhere, but if your first movie is set in the mountains, yeah, the logical next step for a sequel is probably the city.
Hmm.
So there's that. But like we were saying before, we add more to our voice cast. There's a lot more talking animals. It starts to there's like a line between Home Alone 2 and Look Who's Talking Now. Is where we are.
I mean, if you look at it, in the first one, they got Don Amici to do a voice. In the second one of the main dogs is Sinbad.
Nothing against Sinbad, but I see what you mean.
Yeah.
At the same time, I see what you mean.
No, because there's been times that Sinbad's been great. Who doesn't love Sinbad and Good Burger?
Yeah. Poor Jingle all the way. He's brilliant. And when I say that, people think I'm kidding. But
I
the
love
thing
that the
about
word
it,
brilliant came to mind.
but the thing about it is the whole introducing more dogs thing is they immediately play it up in some of those over the top ways. Like I do. If we weren't dealing with a sequel to Homeward Bound where only the three animals talked, I would like the broadcaster joke.
Mm-hmm.
And not just that it's actually them voicing them, but the idea of the dogs just sitting there commentating on a little league game. And I do genuinely love the moment when Chance can't hold it anymore and he chases the ball and they call him a crazed fan. A crazed fan has run out onto the field. That is genuinely funny.
It does make you wish there was more scenes like that of just dogs doing commentary on everyday activities.
Yeah, and to their credit, it seems like an obvious joke, but credit where credit's due that it's actually the real commentators voicing them.
Yeah, it's great that they got Bob Uecker coming out of Major League.
Oh, I forgot to mention something.
Hmm.
The director of this movie,
The first one or the second one?
this one,
Uh-huh.
the second one, sadly is no longer with us, but I do feel like I need to mention. I believe this was his first movie as a director, David R. Ellis.
Mm-hmm.
He would not direct another movie for another 6 or so years, and the next movie he directed after Homeward Bound 2 was another sequel.
What was it?
This guy directed Homeward Bound 2 and didn't direct another movie until, I kid you not, Final Destination 2.
Whoa.
And he did the fourth Final Destination movie as well. I even talked about that in my Final Destination video. He did the lesser Final Destination movies, but he did them after Homeward Bound 2. You can see a significant change in tone here. To his credit, I suppose. I mean, if that's not range.
I mean, his first two movies did involve, like, shit on a semi-truck going haywire for a minute.
So, yeah, so you seem surprised when I brought it up before, but you get what I mean about there's a lot of Home Alone 2 parallels here.
Yeah.
Like, enough to where it's alarming. Even two bumbling villains. I mean, I know two bumbling villains was a common thing in kids' movies in general after Home Alone,
Yeah.
but I mean, there's just so many Home Alone 2 parallels. It's ridiculous.
Homeward Bound 2 was missing a Tim Curry, though.
Yeah, you've even got the scenes where the family's talking to the cop or the security guy or whatever he is.
Mm-hmm.
And those scenes, even though they're over the phone, they feel so similar. I honestly kept expecting the exact line from the guy in this movie of, "It's very unlikely they'd be anywhere else." Talking about the pets this song.
Mm-hmm.
No, the pets don't even know how to use a credit card. And that's the thing too about we were talking about the family stuff in this one and the way it's handled here. And now it's another one of those lose-lose scenarios where no matter what you do, you've backed yourself into a corner you can't get out of. As far as they don't really show the family that much in this one at all.
No. The lack of Robert Hayes is disturbing.
But that's the thing is, it's lose-lose because when you take the family out of it that much, there's a lot of genuine emotional beats from the first one from those that are missing now.
Yeah, what's our emotional beat? This Jamie might be tired of Chance.
Yeah.
Which,
But
look how Chance acts. No wonder he's like, dude, fuck off for a minute.
yeah, it's like he's growing out of the behavior that Chance has, but Chance doesn't grow out of it.
Yeah, it almost makes Chance trying to learn things from Shadow in the first one pointless because he obviously didn't pick up anything.
Yeah. But the counter to that, where I talk about it being a lose-lose scenario to what you're going to do with the family,
Mm-hmm.
because you can either take them out pretty much like they did and lose those emotional beats, but if you kept them in, would they have done anything with the family that didn't just feel like exact copies of their scenes from the first movie?
Yeah.
Which is a criticism some people had about the parent scenes in Home Alone too. So, yeah. So that was just kind of lose-lose, but
And there's a way you could have fit those in there. What if the plot of the second one was that Peter went off to college and Shadow went to find him?
they would
There's
have
a
beat Toy
simple
Story 3
plot.
to it.
Huh?
They would have beat Toy Story 3 to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also just think it's interesting how there's only 3 animals in the first movie, but I think their setting has a lot to do with it because there's the moment with like the mountain lion where they basically walk into Born Free, and then that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
They do the catapult thing, which is totally outlandish, but it's they're working with the surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find this one a lot more boring, despite the fact that there's significantly more talking animals? Because what do they,
Yeah.
once we meet the other talking animals, what do? They just kind of walk around.
Well, John Polito's like a gang boss or something.
Yeah, they were trying to do something like that. He reminded me of Chaz Palminteri's cat and Stuart Little, even though
I
this
had
came.
that thought too.
And Stuart Little pulled that off a lot better. There's the Michael J. Fox voices the main character animal movies are competing now.
Oh my God, I never even thought of that.
And it's weird that the one that came after this one, you could say, did it better. And there's probably not a lot of things you could say Stuart Little did better than other movies, but
Now I want to see a movie that's a dad off between Hugh Laurie and Robert Hayes. But it has to be Hugh Laurie from House and Robert Hayes from Airplane.
Yeah, I would watch that.
See, it's one of those things that sounds ridiculous at first, and you think about it, and you're like, "Yep, that's a winner." That's like the story of Billy Bob Thornton and Hank Azaria driving around being Carl and Agador in a car and pretending to be a buddy cop movie. I'd watch that. I'd watch the shit out of that.
So, talking about the dog scenes being boring because they kind of just walk around and do whatever. You talk about what we were talking about, where you go all the way back to the 1960s movie, 1963, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact they were able to pull that off without the animals talking to each other. Okay, you want to talk about a movie, a sequel even, that somehow managed to pull off something better than Homeward Bound 2 does, and that is A Dog Love Story. There is a movie that you would not expect to pull out of your back pocket to say this movie did it better.
Mm-hmm.
But there is another sequel with a dog love story in it that did it with no dialogue or talking dogs.
Okay.
And it basically feels like a retread of that, just with dialogue that doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm talking about Beethoven's Second.
Mm.
Once again, a movie you do not expect to pull out and say this did it better, but did Beethoven's Second do it better? he buys her fucking popcorn in Beethoven's Second, and somehow they do that better than him doing I'm going to use a frisbee so you don't get rain on your head. But the thing is we were talking about something with the Turtles movies last week, and that was there were moments in the third Turtles movie where we were like, it almost feels like they just let Corey Feldman record dialogue over the footage that he's just watching cold.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's what everybody that does the voice of an animal in this movie is doing. They were like, hey, this is the footage of the animals we shot. Just fill it in. Just bullshit until we have dialogue. And I feel like that's how the animal dialogue was written in this movie.
See, I think another difference between this one and the first one is I think you could watch the first one on mute and figure out the story without having to have any of the dialogue. You can't do that with this one.
Yeah. As like I said, that would highlight even more. All they're really doing is just walking around, and it's like, hey, we've got more recognizable voices. I don't know how recognizable Carlo Gugino was to the children in 1996, but hey, Sinbad's here.
And John Polito and Brad Garrett.
Steven Tolowski, don't forget him.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing here is, how many dogs had an attachment to the Carlo Gugino dog? She had like a whole thing going on.
Yeah. And see, the funny thing is this movie, where the first one was about the three of them surviving an experience together. In the sequel, the other two take a back seat to Chance. It's Chance's movie.
Yeah, which is exactly what you would expect them to do in a sequel.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he was the breakout character because he was the funny one. Better make him the entire thing. It's Urkel syndrome. That's what happened.
I just love that it's called Urkel syndrome.
I'm sure there's a character pre-Urkel that set the standard for this, but he's the first one that comes to mind.
Mm.
But Key and Peele did a whole sketch on this that's hilarious. But the thing also is, let's not forget, if it doesn't seem lazy enough, that it basically feels like they said, here's the footage, just talk, celebrities, just say something. You know the direction was, but don't forget, dog puns all the time. If all else fails, dog pun. That's all you have to know. And then we start hitting all the familiar beats of the first movie. The kid in the burning building would be a profound moment if not for the fact that it's basically the lost girl moment from the first movie. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
We already had that moment, and it hit significantly more before. And, shock surprise, we get another false climax. The whole blood red van gets thrown into water because it's a kids movie, and that's how you dispatch bad guys in kids movies in the 90s. Water. And they're like the aliens from Signs or the Wicked Witch. Just if all else fails, get rid of your villains with water. And if you just leave them in the water, the day will be saved. They won't climb out. They apparently can't swim. Maybe there is like a whole body of water that just has the villains of kids movies from the 90s at the bottom of it that couldn't swim. Just all the skeletons of all the villains from the 90s kids movies.
I don't know why this particular scene came to mind, but I thought of Tusk when he's dumped in the water and you see the skeleton of the last person he tried to do it with.
Yeah.
That couldn't swim. That kind of place.
Yeah, or all the guns in The Irishman, where they all dispose of the guns in the same place. So I did not expect to bring up
the barge from the Lady Killers. There's a lot of examples of this.
But yeah, anyway, we dispatch of Michael Rispoli in his blood red van, but then there's still the whole segment after that, where once again it's like it's totally misplaced, where Chance has to go off and be pissy by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Our scenes are not in order. What is going on with this? The whole thing of Chance going off and being pissy by himself is supposed to be the middle of the movie. why is it the end when everything's been taken care of pretty much?
Yeah, most other movies, that would be like the end of Act 2.
Yeah. And it would have been, and once again, lose-lose. It would have just been cliche and boring if it was in the right spot. But now it's in the wrong place, which makes it even worse. So you're like, yeah, they're taking cliches, and it's always like they're intentionally finding ways to make them worse. I don't, I don't get the logic on that. Why can't these movies handle their timelines?
And I know that their whole thought process was Chance was the funny one. He was the breakout character of the first one. I think out of the three, his would be like having a sequel about him would seem to be the least interesting of the three. Like I said, I would much rather have had a sequel that explores Peter and Shadow's relationship more.
Yeah, because we praise, Michael J. Fox being able to do that voice work convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like the logical step, and this is usually the case. But you have to advertise. You have to sell something if you want to get all cynical.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sell it to children. The thing that bad sequels always expand on is the stuff that they should be cutting down.
Yeah.
But instead of cutting it down, they double down. And that's what always happened in bad sequels for 90s kids movies.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, I guess I don't know why I hate to say it, but if you were going to do a sequel about Chance and you wanted it to have meaning, you should have just went with the story of Marley and Me.
Oh God. I was gonna bring up Marley and Me when you were talking about Shadow earlier, but I didn't.
But it's like Marley and Me is what should have happened with Chance. I mean, I guess you could say it's not, but I guess you could say the closest thing that you get to a Shadow sequel is what, A Dog's Purpose?
Even then, when we talked about A Dog's Purpose when I reviewed it, the thing we talked about was take out the Josh Gad voiceover and you might have a movie. So even they were like, yeah, it's. But yeah, you talk. I just love the contrast here, where you're talking about you want Chance in your movie, put him the fuck to sleep. It's like the ending of the movie is him having a run-in with Will Sasso of all people and going, oh man, this pizza's good. Bye guys. And like that's the end.
You set that up like the ending of Dirty Work.
That's exactly what it is. He's doing voiceover and he literally says, okay guys, at the end. Because it's so awkward there for a minute because he pauses because he's eating the pizza and he's like, oh man, this pizza's good. And it's like, really? That's the line? All right, the pizza's good. Go on. And he just eats the pizza, and then he's just like, all right, guys, it's over. Credits. Credits right there.
Both movies just start running credits in the middle of things.
It's like we were talking about with the Turtle sequels. They just decide to end. It's like they're done with themselves.
Yeah.
They're as done with themselves as Shadow is when you put the phone to his ear.
There's a lot of moments like that. Like when we're in the pound and Sassy finds Shadow. He's just laying there. Shadow's just ready for it to all end.
It's almost cruel to put Shadow in a sequel because that's the last thing the Shadow from the first movie would have wanted.
Yeah.
It's like, really? We got another one of these things, and we're traveling now? End me.
I mean, it might have been kind of hard to make it kid-friendly, but, I mean, you could have done a sequel where Chance and Sassy go away because Shadow's sick or dies or something, and they don't take it well. And it could be a movie about accepting death.
We're bringing up these scenarios they were never going to do.
No.
Not in a million years was a Homeward Bound sequel in the 90s. People are. I mean, obviously, we still have movies like Homeward Bound 2 today, but I like to think that people are a little smarter about their sequels these days than they would have been just kind of going where the money's at in the 90s.
Scoob,
But, you know.
Scoob.
All right, so I hated Scoop so much, I ended up just not doing that review. I'm just gonna do it later with when I have
Oh my god!
well when I have more movies to review, I'll do one of those big review videos that
It's
I
gonna
do.
make the top 10 worst list, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't even know if lists are gonna be possible this year. We'll have to figure that out later.
It's a
But
weird year. It's a weird year for film.
yeah, which is why the stuff we're talking about is the stuff we're talking about. That's how a problem child versus never would have happened. This video would have never happened if not for the stuff that's going on. So, yeah, I think on that, is that pretty much where we are
That
on
pretty
this?
much covers it.
Yeah, because I hate to, because it is. I know it's a cop out. I mean, there's many movies where I don't like to give it this, much of an opening, but it's like this is the kind of stuff that you can throw into the harmless category. It's just kind of annoying where you
Mhm.
can see where they went with stuff strictly because it's what would sell.
Yeah.
But it's not like they're not like the second one in particular. We're being harsh on. Like obviously, like I said, the second movie is the best thing that could have happened to the first movie. So
Mm.
it's the worst thing that could happen to it because there's so much more you could have done that would have been much better and kind of sort of echoed the sentiments or took us in new directions that were worthwhile. But at the same time, when comparing the first movie to the second, it's the best thing that could have happened to it. So,
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
all right, then I guess that's it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't think we figured out yet what we're gonna do next.
no, I assume we'll do that when we're done recording, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, it'll be a surprise.
Yeah. All right, then I guess that's it.